أكبر الله أكبر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Inshallah, we're going to be continuing with the monthly series on the months of the Islamic calendar. And of course today, inshallah, we're going to be speaking about the blessed month of Ramadan. Tonight is going to be the 29th of Sha'ban, which means tomorrow, there's a possibility, it might be the first night of the month of Ramadan, and Tarawih possibly maybe tomorrow. So inshallah, it's good for us to mentally prepare. Hopefully, inshallah, we've prepared already in terms of mentally, and this series, the aim and the goal was to speak about the month which is about to come, maybe a few days or maximum a week before the month begins. So inshallah, we'll speak about the virtues and the merits, but first we'll speak about the origin of the word itself. The word Ramadan, where does the word Ramadan come from? Imam al-Raghib rahimahullah, he said, Ramadan is taken from the word Ramad, Ra Mim Dad, which means that which is intensely heated by the sun. Something which is intensely heated by the sun. And they say the word Ramda, without the fatha on the mim, means the intense heat of the sun. The intense heat of the sun. And they would say that the Arabs, they would have the sheep grazing under the scorching heat of the sun in those days, to the extent where their livers would become damaged by the intense heat. And of course in those days, today in the desert it's very hot. And also it said that Ramadan is called Ramadan because it burns the sins of the believers. And Imam Zamakhshari also spoke about the word Ramadan, and he said when they changed the names of the months from the ancient language, they named them according to the seasons in which they fell. And this month fell in the days of intense heat, and that's why it's called Ramadan. And Imam al-Qurtubi rahimahullah, he says, it was named Ramadan because it burns the sins of people with their righteous deeds. Meaning a person, when he does good deeds, those good deeds burn away and get rid of the evil deeds. And there is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he speaks about good deeds removing sins, and a person who does good deeds, he's rewarded. Allah mentions it in the Qur'an also, in al-hasanati yudhibna sayyi'at, roll your righteous deeds, extinguish the evil deeds. So inshallah, that's with regards to the name of the month. And now inshallah we'll speak about some of the virtues. And I'm sure that we've all heard of many of the virtues of the month of Ramadan already. So inshallah I'll pass it on to you. What are the virtues of the month of Ramadan? I could go over them, but obviously, it's something you guys are, I think, aware of, inshallah. So what are the virtues of Ramadan here?
If you fasting sincerely, the previous year's sins will be forgiven.
Say that again, sorry?
If you fasting the whole Ramadan sincerely.
Yeah, good. So man sama Ramadan iman wa ihtisaban ghufira lahu ma taqaddama min dhanbihi. Whoever fasts Ramadan with iman and hopeful of Allah's reward, all his past sins are forgiven. Yeah? What are some of the other virtues and blessings?
Allah saves people from Jahannam every single night.
Yeah, so Allah saves people from hellfire as a result of their good deeds, and this is from the mercy of Allah. This is the month in which the Qur'an was revealed. And this isn't like by coincidence. It didn't just so happen that Allah revealed the Qur'an on a specific night, and that night happened to be in Ramadan. There's obviously a wisdom with everything Allah does. And so Allah revealing the Qur'an in Laylatul Qadr, in the month of Ramadan, shows us the value and the status of this blessed month. And it's something which we should really ponder, that we should be humble, that Allah Azza wa Jal is allowing us to be able to, inshallah, witness another month of Ramadan where we can utilize our time reciting the Qur'an. I've already spoken about Laylatul Qadr. So, what's the virtue of Laylatul Qadr? It's better than 1,000 months. And that's equivalent to 83 years. Meaning if a person does good deeds for 83 years, him performing good deeds in Laylatul Qadr is better than him worshipping Allah for 83 years. So it's something which we should all be observant of, inshallah. Anything else? What are some of the other virtues? The month of Ramadan, when it comes, the gates of paradise are open, and the gates of hellfire are closed. And the shayateen are chained. And this means, it doesn't mean that the shayateen don't have influence. It means that a person is easier, or he finds it easier for himself to be able to do good deeds. I mean, we can see this, generally speaking. And it's harder for him, or he has to try harder for him to commit sins. And of course, if a person has a habit of committing sins, then it's going to be harder for him to overcome those habits in Ramadan. But generally speaking, there's that blessing and barakah of the month of Ramadan, where it's easier for a person to do good deeds in that blessed month. Also qiyam in the month of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever performs qiyam with the imam until he finishes, he'll be rewarded and it will be written for him as if he prayed the whole night. Even if he only prayed an hour, or an hour and a half, or 2 hours, or 3 hours, whatever the case may be. So you have all of these blessings of the month of Ramadan. Also the Qur'an, it's a month of Qur'an, it's a month of reciting the Qur'an, it's a month of a person remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Virtues of fasting. The word fast itself refers to abstaining. The word fast in the Arabic language means an imsak, which is to abstain or stay away from something. And it's interesting, Maryam alayhi salam, she says in the Qur'an, إِنِّي نَذَرْتُ لِلرَّحْمَنِ صَوْمًا فَلَنْ أُكَلِّمَ الْيَوْمَ إِنسِيًّا. She says, I've made an oath to fast, so I'm not going to be speaking to anybody. Because they say in the past, in the lives of the previous prophets, their fast, the details and the sharia of those fasts were different. So Maryam alayhi salam would fast, but she would still eat and drink. Why would she still eat and drink? What is she abstaining from? Speech. Why is she abstaining from speech? Because speech is one of the things which could cause a person to enter hellfire. So obviously it doesn't apply to us now. When we fast in Islam, it's staying away from food and drink, we have to speak. But in those days, the point is that fasting was still a thing, it was still something which used to happen. And different nations had their different rulings. Fasting, brothers and sisters, has its merits, it has its virtues. We know of the many hadith about fasting, how the gates of paradise have names, and from those names of one of the gates is Ar-Rayyan, and this is the gate through which people who used to fast will enter through. So you have lots of virtues of the month of Ramadan, many things which are mentioned with regards to the blessing of the month of Ramadan. Also, you also have the famous hadith, whoever fasts the month of Ramadan, then follows it up with the 6 days of Sha'ban, فَكَأَنَّمَا صَامَ الدَّهْرَ. It's as if he has fasted for the whole of the year. So again, this shows us the importance of continuing fasting after the month of Ramadan. Also, iftar is something which is a blessing in the month of Ramadan, not just because we can eat all the food that we haven't been eating for the last few hours, but also because the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever gives iftar to someone, so maybe we're wondering, why do we always give iftar to people, and people give us iftar. Whoever gives iftar to someone who is fasting will have a reward like his, without that detracting from the fasting person's reward in the slightest. Meaning, if you feed a fasting person iftar, it's as if you were fasting also. And if you're already fasting, you'll get double the reward. So imagine feeding 10 people, 30 people, 100 people. This is the reward of a person who fasts and then feeds others who are also fasting in the month of Ramadan. Also, we'll speak about some of the issues related to Ramadan. From them, a tradition and a statement which is sometimes mentioned where people say Ramadan Mubarak. What does Mubarak mean? We say Ramadan Mubarak. What does the word Mubarak mean? Any ideas?
Blessed.
Blessed. And so, sometimes people may ask, is it permissible to say this? Nothing wrong with the person saying this, because the month of Ramadan is it's a blessed month. It's a blessed month. You also have some who say Ramadan Kareem, which the Salaf spoke about. From the scholars who spoke about saying this phrase Ramadan Kareem, they said it depends on what the person means. If he means that by saying Ramadan Kareem, he's speaking about the karam and the kindness and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the mercy of the blessed month of Ramadan, with regards to the greatness of this month and how people are forgiven in this month and how rewards are increased and multiplied in this month, and how Allah Azza wa Jal rewards people and how people are saved from hellfire, etc. There's nothing wrong with the person saying Ramadan Kareem, although it's not something which the Prophet mentioned or the companions themselves said, Allah knows best. But if a person means something specific, like there's a specific day or a specific point in time in the month of Ramadan which is specifically Kareem, then of course that wouldn't be something permissible because there has to be evidence to suggest this. But just general statement, reminding people of the karam and the kindness of Allah, the generosity and mercy of Allah in the month of Ramadan. Nothing wrong with this also, inshallah. Now, we move on to incidents which took place in the month of Ramadan. But before we go into the incidents, I wanted to also go through some ways in which we can prepare for the month of Ramadan. And again, I think most of us here have fasted before, in previous Ramadans, and sometimes we make the same mistakes every single year before Ramadan begins. And no doubt, Ramadan is almost here now. So in terms of preparation, we've done all the preparation we really could have done. So what I wanted to do is see and ask, what things can we do this Ramadan to make it a better Ramadan than previous years? What do you guys think? What things can we do this Ramadan to make it better than previous years that we've participated in Ramadan? What I'll do, I'll give you a couple of minutes. In time, I'm sure you're all contemplating and reflecting and thinking about the question. So, groups of 3, inshallah, discuss it. I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes, and then I'll see what you guys have. So, what can we do this Ramadan to make it better than previous years? Inshallah, okay? I'll give you 1 minute.
Things that you haven't done before. Different things that you haven't done before.
Name one.
If you haven't read the whole Qur'an before, maybe you can read it all this
Yeah,
year.
last year I couldn't finish the whole Qur'an, so probably that could be one goal. And I missed some Tarawih for work reason. Yeah, I had to miss for some work reasons. Probably this year.
Yeah.
That's my goal to attend all of them. And so that yeah, you can increase the amount than the last year. And also this year probably you can donate to the Palestine people because they need more.
We need always do dua.
Yeah, Torah. Lots of Torah. This year is really special. And also I had some plans to learn something new. For example, it was learn Arabic, but doesn't know Arabic. They cannot learn Arabic. And probably duas, there are lots of duas we don't know. We have a goal. In 30 days we can learn 30 duas.
Okay, inshallah. So, what things can we do?
Provide more dua to Palestine.
Okay, so making more dua, yeah, to Palestine and those who are suffering around the world, yeah. Good.
Bring more in the mosque 5 times a day.
Okay, so trying to attend the masjid more, having more of a connection with the masjid, yeah, so all good.
Yeah,
beneficial things.
complete the Quran in 30 days.
Okay,
if
Quran in
possible.
30 days, yeah. So
And
that's
also,
something which is maybe a goal of many of us, yeah.
Understanding the Quran.
Anyone else?
Understanding the Quran, yeah.
Trying to get a better understanding of the Quran, yeah.
Upset good sins.
Okay, staying away from sins.
Be more kind to others.
Okay, so showing more kindness towards others.
Giving sadaqah.
Okay, giving sadaqah.
yeah, learn some new duas probably, probably learning Quran if they can't read.
Okay, yeah. So lots of good points mentioned here about how we can improve our Ramadan, reciting the Quran, attending the masjid, understanding the Quran, other things which are also mentioned. But I think it's good to have an idea of how this is going to be done. I mean, we all know we're supposed to be reading the Quran, isn't it? We all know we're supposed to be, more observant in our recitation of the Quran, making dua for others, attending the masjid, praying in a better manner, praying more, etc. But practically, how will a person change? Because I'm sure we said the same things last year.
We're going to have to have a plan.
Same thing last year, same thing the year before. We're going to read more Qur'an. We're going to pray more. We're going to be fast more. We're going to have certain things that we're going to do, but it never actually gets done, or maybe we don't accomplish those goals. So practically, how can we try to change things? Yeah.
Break it up into smaller tasks.
Okay. What are you referring to specifically?
Yeah, so if you're trying to read a juz a day, for example.
Okay, Qur'an, yeah.
Read a few pages after every salah or something, instead of just leaving it for the end of the day.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I mean, a person might think, for example, reciting the whole Qur'an in the month of Ramadan seems like a very big task or challenging task, very high aspiration for some of us. One thing to remember is if a person is reading Qur'an regularly before Ramadan, and let's say he was reading one Qur'an every month anyway, then actually wouldn't be that hard. The problem is maybe some of us only read Qur'an once a week, for example, on the day of Friday. And that's the problem, isn't it? Because we're not used to it. So again, the more a believer does before Ramadan, the better his Ramadan will be. Because it's not some magical switch where you turn a switch on in Ramadan, all of a sudden, mashallah, the slave, all of a sudden he'll be doing so many more good deeds. Yes, Ramadan is a blessed month where a person will do more, but also he has to make the effort. So if you don't make the effort yourself, then you're not going to reap the rewards. And with regards to Qur'an, what the brother mentioned of breaking things down is actually a very good point. Because sometimes things seem very big when we look at them from a holistic point of view. But then, actually, if we break it down, it's not actually that hard. I mean, I'm sure many of you have been hiking. Anyone ever been to the hills, or Lake District, Peak District, and gone hiking in the mountains, etc. And you see a mountain, you see a big mountain, and you don't think to yourself, how am I going to end up on top of that mountain? What are you doing? You just basically walk your way, and eventually you just get there, one step at a time. So, they say mountains are climbed by single steps. And so it's the same thing. Now, a good way of understanding how to accomplish the Qur'an in the month of Ramadan is not a very difficult way. If I can get a mushaf here. It's actually a very good way of accomplishing one Qur'an in the month of Ramadan. These mushafs, and I think most mushafs today, 20 pages is one juz. There are 30 juz in the Qur'an. Now, if a person was to read 2 pages, how long would that take? 2 pages, 2 pages.
10 minutes.
2 minutes, let's say 3 minutes, 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, max. Yeah, for people who struggle. Now, if you read 2 pages before Fajr, so that's 2-3 minutes before you actually pray Fajr, okay, and then 2 pages after Fajr, that's 4 pages. Is that hard? No. But anyone else said that was difficult to do? No, it's not hard to do. It's 2-3 minutes before Fajr. Instead of just getting on our phones, just before Fajr, just pray, just read 2 pages. After Fajr, we're doing our adhkar anyway. Okay, after our adhkar, 2 more minutes, just read some Qur'an. Literally 2-3 minutes. Same thing before Dhuhr and after Dhuhr. Same thing before Asr after Asr. Before Maghrib after Maghrib. Before Isha after Isha. In fact, Isha will probably most likely be in the masjid anyway for Tarawih. So maybe you can do even more. How much have you done then? 20 pages. That's just one juz there. You just done one juz in a day. Minimum. So is it hard? You break it down like this, it's actually not that hard. Now the problem is consistency. The problem is disciplining yourself to be able to do this. So it's just about the state of mind. And one of the ways you can discipline yourself is by having this routine in one format or another before Ramadan begins. And of course, this is something which we can't do right now, but all is not lost. A person should still try his best. Again, as we just broke it down, it's not that hard. It's not that difficult for a person to do. If he's consistent, inshallah, he'll accomplish the whole Qur'an. In fact, maybe we can do even more now. Looking at this fashion and this manner of reading the whole Qur'an in Ramadan, maybe a person can do even more. So the point is, It's not hard once a person puts his mind to it and is disciplined. And then inshallah, if he's disciplined and consistent, it won't be difficult for that person. Likewise, we spoke about salah, making sure a person prays. I would also encourage everyone to pray the rawatib prayers, the sunnah prayers, the 2 before fajr, the 2 before dhuhr, or the 4 before dhuhr, and the 2 after dhuhr. And some say 4 and 4 after. There's 10 or 12 sunnah prayers. And the 2 after maghrib and the 2 after isha. So you have those sunnah prayers. I would advise everyone to pray them, because your sunnah prayers will make up for your obligatory prayers on the day of judgment. If your obligatory prayers are deficient, Allah will take your sunnah prayers and He will make up your obligatory prayers. And so it's a beautiful habit to get into, especially in the month of Ramadan, and it will strengthen your obligatory prayers. How will it strengthen your obligatory prayers? Because a person, if he doesn't ever miss his sunnah prayers, it won't even enter his mind that he's going to miss an obligatory prayer. Do you understand? Like his standards are higher now. So he's never missing his sunnah prayers. His obligatory prayers will be of even higher standards. They'll have an even better level of quality to them. And of course, when we speak about fasting, the routine sometimes is difficult. It's too late now, unless we're already in the habit of fasting regularly anyway. And if Ramadan isn't tomorrow night, then a person, if he's in the habit of fasting Mondays and Thursdays, he can fast on Monday. There is a hadith which mentions, don't follow up Ramadan with fasting 1 or 2 days before Ramadan, unless a person's already in the habit of fasting. So if you're not in the habit of fasting, there's no need to fast now. But the point is that if you are fasting on a regular basis, fasting in Ramadan won't be that hard. It won't be that hard. Obviously, it's not that hard anyway, let's be honest. It's not that hard in Ramadan. We find it easy to fast. There's barakah and blessing. But if you've already been fasting, this can be even easier in Ramadan. And that way you don't have to worry about what you're going to have for suhoor, what you're going to eat for iftar, where you're going to be. The logistical side of Ramadan won't be a problem because you're already fasting. You're already in the habit of fasting. So these are the main things that a person needs to ponder on, reflect on. I'd also advise to have goals. Have realistic but high goals for the month of Ramadan. If it's reading 1 Qur'an, 2 Qur'ans, 3 Qur'ans this month, if it's, for example, doing this many adhkar, if it's, for example, attending the masjid for Tarawih prayer every single day, if it's reading and praying a certain number of rak'ahs at home, yourself after Tarawih, for example, whatever the case may be, have some goals. And researchers, they say a person is 30% more likely to accomplish his goals if he writes his goals down, like on a piece of paper. Write your goals down on a piece of paper, put it on your wall in your bedroom, and that way every time you wake up you'll see your goals. But this isn't just something which, just making up. This is, they say, when a person constantly, regularly, every morning, every afternoon, every evening, he's seeing his goals on the wall, it's always going to be a source of a reminder for him to be able to do those goals. And we're not talking about writing your goals in your on your phone, because you have so many notes on your phone that you probably forget about them anyway. Yeah. So it's about writing them down on a piece of paper so that when you see those goals, it motivates you. So write your goals down, whatever those goals are. And also don't compare your goals to another person's goals, because we're all on different paths, different journeys. We all have our own abilities. We all have our own strengths and weaknesses. Maybe somebody wants to give, £1,000 in charity this month. And maybe some of us are unable to do that. So it's not realistic to compare. We have our goals, other people will have their goals, but like we said, aim high. There's a famous quote, I think it was Bruce Lee in fact who said it. He said something like, aim for the stars and land on the moon. What does he mean? Aim high, and if you don't accomplish your goal, you're still going to get somewhat close. Yeah, you'll be somewhere in the vicinity. For example, if someone says, I'm going to read half of the Qur'an this month. I'm very busy, I don't have time, I'll read half the Qur'an. He may end up reading 1/4 of the Qur'an. If he said, no, I'm going to read 3 Qur'ans, then most likely he'll at least accomplish 1 Qur'an this Ramadan. So it's a state of mind. It's just a state of mind. Aim high. If you don't accomplish the goal, let's say your goal is to read 3 Qur'ans this month, for example. If you struggle reading Qur'an once this Ramadan, make your goal that you're going to do 3 Qur'ans. Make that the goal. Organize your time and do it in a way where you're expecting to do 3 Qur'ans. And try your best to do it. And by the end of Ramadan, if you do 2 Qur'ans or 1 Qur'an, then alhamdulillah, you're thankful to Allah for what He's given you the ability to be able to do. And there's plenty of room for improvement in the future. So always aim high and don't compare yourself with others. And inshallah we'll move on now to some of the incidents which took place in the month of Ramadan. Of course, the Qur'an was revealed. The famous incident of the Prophet ﷺ in Ghar Hira, when the Qur'an was revealed, the first 5 ayahs of Surah Alaq, when Jibreel ﷺ came to the Prophet ﷺ and squeezed him and told him to recite. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, on a Monday I was born, and on a Monday the Qur'an was revealed to me. So the Qur'an was revealed on a Monday. That's also one of the wisdoms behind why we fast on Mondays. And Thursdays, and the narration mentions that those 2 days, Mondays and Thursdays, are days of the week in which a person's deeds are going up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also the Battle of Badr. The Battle of Badr took place in the month of Ramadan. It didn't seem like it was the case that fasting in Ramadan had been obligated, but simply the fact that it was the month of Ramadan shows us the blessing. The first battle which ever took place, it was of course a great victory for the Muslims. Nobody was expecting an actual battle. They were expecting just to raid a caravan, the caravan of Abu Sufyan, who was coming from the Roman Empire, and they realized this is actually going to be a battle. And there were 313 Muslims, around 950 non-Muslims, and the Muslims were given victory by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the Prophet ﷺ makes his way back to Medina, and he hears the sad news that his daughter had passed away. So the Prophet ﷺ's daughter Ruqayya radiallahu anha also passed away in the same month as the Battle of Badr in the month of Ramadan. And again this shows us, what does it show us? What do we learn here? That there was this great victory, and then his daughter also passes away. That life is full of ups,
difficulty,
and downs. Meaning, you're going to have good days, you'll have days which will be positive, you'll have days where good things happen, you'll feel blessed, you'll have days where you're happy, and then you'll have days where you're sad. And this is the reality of life. This is the case with the Prophet ﷺ. The very same day, a very high and a very low when it comes to a loved one passing away and a victory for the Muslims. First ever victory for the Muslims. So it really shows us that this is something which is the case in our lives. Every human being will go through difficulties. Every single human being will go through trials and tribulations. Those trials and tribulations will be tailor-made for him by Allah. Things that he can handle, as Allah says. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah doesn't burden a person with more than what he can bear. So he's able to deal with whatever burden he's been given, whatever test he's been given by Allah. But this shows us the importance of patience, and Ramadan of course is a perfect time for a person having patience. Also it said that Hassan ibn Ali radiallahu anhu, the grandson of the Prophet ﷺ, was born in the month of Ramadan, in the 3rd year of the Hijrah, in the 15th day of the month of Ramadan. Al-Hassan ibn Ali radiallahu anhu was born. And finally, the liberation of Mecca, the conquest of Mecca, also took place in the 20th day of the month of Ramadan, in the 8th year of the Hijrah. The 8th year of the Hijrah, the conquest of Mecca took place, and there was a treaty before that, the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. The Quraysh broke the treaty because one of their allies attacked one of the tribes that was allying with the Muslims, and the Quraysh actually supported them. They said, we'll give you weapons and go at night and nobody will know, and then they can't blame us. And of course it didn't work out, the plan failed, and everyone found out what had happened, and many people were killed as a result of this. And so the actual treaty was null and void now. And so eventually the Prophet ﷺ arranged and prepared an army, and they went into Mecca and they conquered Mecca with a few people being killed, 3 or 4 or 5 people. And this again was a big sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the sign of Islam entering into the holiest place in the world in a peaceful manner. So you have these incidents which took place in the month of Ramadan, and this is also an important lesson for us, that victories have taken place in the month of Ramadan. And we're reflecting on what's happening in Palestine. May Allah ease their suffering. May Allah make things easy for them. Yesterday at the khutbah here, we spoke about the importance of dua. And, you know, there was this person speaking about Ramadan. And so we should be acting in a manner where we know our du'as are going to be affecting them. And that's going to be helping the Muslims. Like, they don't know what's coming, to be honest. We should be making dua in such a manner that we know it's going to affect them. And it's going to give victory to the Muslims, inshallah. So a person makes the effort to make lots of dua in the month of Ramadan, knowing that it's going to make a difference, it's going to help, and that inshallah it's going to be a positive influence for him and also for the Muslims all over the world. And with that inshallah we'll conclude. Any questions before we finish? Any questions anybody has about anything we've spoken about today, tonight?
Shaykh, like those who can't recite properly the Quran, like he's not fluent in reciting. So if you're like listening and just watching the Quran and listening and like the Bluetooth and listening and
so if you listen, so a couple of things. First of all, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, the expert in the Quran is with the noble angels, and the one who struggles reciting Quran, he gets double the reward because he tries harder. And if a person struggles and he's listening to the Quran, then he shouldn't read out loud with the Quran. Because Allah says in the Quran, when the Quran is recited, فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ, then listen to it. If you're moving your tongue and you're reading quietly, slowly to yourself, nothing wrong with that. Because that's a natural thing, that's fine.
okay, so shall I get the same reward?
Sorry?
Shall I get the same reward like when I
Yeah, inshallah. The reward for reciting Quran is that you, at bare minimum, your lips and your tongue are moving. So like in Salah, for example, when we pray, in the quiet Salahs, I'll be reading Quran. Reading Quran. Can somebody hear you in Dhuhr prayer, reading Surah Fatiha? The people can't hear you, but obviously you get the reward, inshallah. Anybody else?
Yeah, Sheikh. When the Ramadan comes, we usually come 5 times to the mosque, and then we recite Qurans, we attend Taraweehs. But when the Ramadan ends, these actions would gone like overnight. So what things we can do to increase our this kind of actions even after the month of Ramadan?
So first of all, it's important to understand that the actions that a person does in the month of Ramadan are blessed actions as a result of the blessing of Ramadan itself, which means after Ramadan finishes, we shouldn't assume that we're going to be doing exactly the same things we did in terms of good deeds outside of Ramadan, because we're only going to be disappointed. But a person should try his best to continue some of the habits and good deeds that he practiced in Ramadan. And it's up to him to be able to look at what he's going to be able to continue. For example, fasting, Mondays and Thursdays, is something which I think every one of us could do. It's not a hard thing, especially after Ramadan finishes. And the Prophet ﷺ said, the most beloved acts to Allah are those which are consistent, even if they're small. So start small, do something, but make sure you do it for the whole year. That's better than doing something big for 1 month and then stopping completely. So don't be disheartened when Ramadan finishes if you feel like you're not doing the things that you did in Ramadan. Because Ramadan is a blessed month. And Allah's made it easier for people to increase in their ibadah. Other months don't have that same blessing. So we have to be careful that we don't feel disheartened and give up as well in Ramadan, after Ramadan. We need to realize, yes, these months are like Ramadan, so I'm not going to be able to do the same things, but I'll continue some of the things, such as how much Qur'an I would read. Okay, we try to be consistent in reading a portion of the Qur'an, in terms of fasting, in terms of your salawat. So try to do something, try to continue with a new habit. One of the signs of an accepted Ramadan is that a person changes after Ramadan. He's better, he's improved in one way or another. Okay, JazakAllahu khair. SubhanakAllahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.